Well, hi there, Jerry Bleeker again. This will be our third lesson from Chapter 1 of Photoshop Classroom in a Book. So in this tutorial, we're really going to focus in on the brush tool and look at some of its presets and how you can use it. And it's a really interesting file that we have here. What this file has, and I'll just pull the palette up, is in its layers, you have several layers that are locked. The only layer that you're working on is this one here, called tie designs. So if I turn off different parts of this, you'll see what it is, okay? So let's turn off everything but the color fills layer. So what you've got is just this sort of design, and the tie is on top of that. So this is a good lesson on layers too, because it shows you that things stacked on top of other things are over top of them for design purposes. The tie design itself has this interesting little small arrow. And later on we'll teach you what this is. This is what's called a masking layer. And that layer gets shown through on the layer below. It's called masking. So that little arrow is telling you what it's being seen through. Kind of interesting. And then you have the outline. So the outline's fun. You can do this, and you can see it's a bit like comic book art, for want of a better description, where it's been inked and it's got the lines have been drawn. So inking separate from the actual sketching of the lines. Plenty cool. Now the layers are being locked for a reason. We want to do work on just this layer. So we don't want you coloring outside the lines, so to speak. All right, so what are we going to do? Let's do some coloring. Now, sometimes I've called this Dad's Sick Tie, the tutorial, or the crazy guy with all the nose hair. No, I'm kidding. That's supposed to be his mustache. What we're looking at here is painting with the brush. So head off into the color palette, and since that's yellow, I'll pick something kind of purpley just for fun, because it'll stand out nicely. And when I go to my foreground color now, my active painting color is this. Okay. If you must know, it's 172 parts red, 36 green, and a whole bunch of blue, 197. I want to paint with this brush, so what are my choices? When it comes to painting in Photoshop, well, everything really is a brush in Photoshop. You can have patterns to paint with. You also have these choices to paint with. Like what kind of painting tool do you want? Right? You can paint in patterns. It's kind of neat. I'll choose this one. You can stamp little stars on them. It looks uber cool. Okay. I'm going to go through my history window. Make sure that's up. Another way, you might have noticed this, and it's interesting because I don't interact with this much, but that will bring up your history there too. So it's a little side palette. They've become more efficient. So I'll close it. What I want to do is just use a brush. So I'll go back, and these are the sizes, by the way, just so you know, that's pretty big. So this is like stamping. You could have fun stamping, but I don't really want to do that. So stay on task here. I want to grab something like this. It's got a bit of a soft edge. The size of my brush right now is 134 pixels. That's a little bit too big. Ease that on down, right? Still too big. Let's go down to like low 30s. Sure, that's as good as anything. You have to really pay attention to the hardness here. Right now, this is quite soft. But if I wanted to, I could increase the hardness, take that to 100%, and go like this. Right? So you see the real difference that makes. I'm going to leave, sure, I'll leave that in place. Why not? Another thing you want to be aware of is you can do a little bit of both here. There are these little buttons in some of these menus like this, and you can get at more of the brushes that exist. So let's say I have these brushes and I don't see what I want, and I'm like, yeah, I need some more. So I can go down to other ones, like what do we got for calligraphy, right? And this window pops up and says, do you want to add this to the brush set y'all got over here? You say, sure. So they're using a really technical term. It means to add to the list, to append. Boom. So when I hit append, you'll see there's a bunch more down here for calligraphic purposes, right? Maybe you're drawing on a Windows tablet or something and you're using Photoshop straight up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this time I'll pick this brush. Looks great, and it's automatically considered to be soft. That's one of its presets. But this time I'll turn the opacity down. My cat's not very impressed. She wants treats. She doesn't like me photoshopping, but I'm going to Photoshop nonetheless. So when I make a couple of little markings on here, you'll see that with the opacity turned down, it's quite transparent. And if I turn the opacity all the way up, right, it's much more opaque. So you got to remember, opaque and transparent are opposites, right? Right now, if I'm 100% opaque, I don't have any transparency. And if I'm 0% opaque, I'm invisible. So if I go like this, I'm not going to see anything, right? It's hard to see that. Let's go back through history. I'm just going to back this up just a little bit. I'll just go like this. There also is something called flow. Okay. And let's turn my opacity up, make that 100%. Flow is how much digital ink comes out of your brush. So if you don't want overwhelming colors, right, you can control the flow. Now sometimes I play around with flow, sometimes I play around with opacity. You can turn it down so that it doesn't come out much, and you have to use more strokes to make something brighter in color. So, okay, that's just another setting you can play around with. Try some strokes out. These tutorials are designed for you to play around, so pause me at any time. It's probably a good thing to do. So let's get flow back up to 100%. All right. So now I want to do some drawing on this tie. So pick a different color because I'm getting bored of this one. Yellow. Okay, so that's a warm color. So if you are in a warm range, contrast is always a little bit off in the cooler range. So for example, blue works. I could just grab sort of this kind of blue and mess around, give him a nice little polka dot tie, you know, and it looks cool. Do you notice I can't paint outside the lines? That's because this tie has an invisible trace around it. If I hide everything, right, and see right here, again, this is the masking layer. So if I make this tie blue, right, and I do these strokes back and forth, I can't paint outside of the lines. And that's pretty good, right? It's a little bit of insurance that you don't mess up. Bring this back, and there you go. Nice looking blue tie. Pretty cool. You can do sort of negative painting. You could come along and, for fun, let's switch the colors. So that's a quick way to get white, right? Make his tie look kind of funky like this. Really, whatever you'd like to do. And remember, as I hit undo, it only goes back one. So if you really want to go back, you need to go back through your history palette. Okay? Okay, so that's fun. But I like to mess with things. I'd never, ever, ever obey the rules. So, no, I'm kidding. I obey the rules. I just have to have a little more fun. Let's zoom in on his nose. Now, I don't know why, but this has always bothered me. Oops, zoom out there, buddy. Use the move tool. Well, not the move tool. I'll just do this. Now, there we go. I want these gone, but these are on this layer and it's locked. Now in Photoshop, if you look, you see the little lock there. You can actually double click this and say, I don't want that thing locked anymore. So now I can come with the eraser, and the eraser is just a brush. And you can play with the eraser's opacity too. You can use it like a semi-eraser. But what I want to do is I want to get rid of those nasal hairs there that, well, look like his mustache, but always strike me as odd. And do this. So we'll give this guy a shave here. And I like to just work kind of close, not too much, not to overdo it. I'm pretty power zoomed in here, so I'm not trying to destroy everything. I'm doing a good job of it, aren't I? But like that. So now, when we zoom out, right? Look how many years I took off him. He looks good. I mean, there's some finer work I could do here, but that's the idea. So now when I bring this back, look at that. Dad's looking good. If you want to have a lot of fun with this, be my guest. Sounds like a Disney movie. And choose a stamping pattern. So splatter, that looks kind of cool. Kind of looks like a water splatter. I'm going to put this to stock default. That makes it black and white. I just do that for me more than anybody else. And from the colors, I could come over here, right? Remember, I could always go to swatches. So looking at that, thinking, how about a little bit of orange? It looks like he dumped his food all over his blue tie. Right? You can also do streaks, but you have to decide what it is you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you're just, the layer's unlocked. Haha. So that's another good warning. Lock the outline so that you can't do any work on it. All right, so now when you do work, it is only going to be on the layer that you're affecting. I know that looks terrible, but that's half the point. It's super fun. You'll notice that this yellow up here, this yellow is not part of the tie layer. It's actually on a different layer that's been secured. I think it's down here in color fills if I didn't know any better. Yep, it's on that layer. So if you want to get to this, you would have to unlock this to mess around with it. If you hate everything and you think this looks terrible, well, you could, watch this. You could do this kind of stuff where we're erasing because it was yellow when we began, right? If you want to erase quickly, you could just do this, watch. All right, just about done, right? And when I was messing around with this, you could see I actually left something behind. That's what happens when you unlock your layers. But there is something called a history menu, right, that you can go through, right, when you've messed up. There you go. So if you wanted to go back in time to that point, you totally can. And then, with the large eraser, you can do the old eraser-rooney there. And you're kind of back to where you started, right? Anyways, it's fun. This is Photoshop Lesson 3, kind of messing around with brushes. Just remember that for brushes, you've got a lot of choices. And there's lots and lots of brushes. You can get at a ton of them. You can reset them here if you'd like to. You can create presets if you want. I haven't done that all that often, but it's a choice, right? Anyways, it was just a quick little run through on brushes. I hope you liked it, and